Can a country run on hope alone? Over a decade after the Arab Spring, Tunisians are grappling with a harsh economic reality. The optimism that once filled Tunis has faded, replaced by a grinding crisis that touches every family and business. Instead of prosperity, Tunisia faces chronic stagnation, high debt, stubborn inflation, and a lack of growth. This isn't just about numbers, it's about the university graduate who can't find work, the shopkeeper struggling to restock, and parents worried about the price of bread. The promise of 2011 was more than democracy, it was about dignity, jobs, and hope. So, how did Tunisia get here, and is there a way out? We'll break down the 5 critical pain points dragging the economy down and explore their human impact. The stakes couldn't be higher, not just for Tunisia, but for the entire region watching to see if the Arab Spring's promise can still be fulfilled. Tunisia's economic crisis boils down to 5 interlinked problems. First, anemic GDP growth. The economy barely keeps up with population growth, so there's little new wealth to share. Second, sky-high unemployment, especially among youth. A generation of educated Tunisians faces a job market with no opportunities, fueling frustration and despair. Third, crushing borrowing costs. High interest rates mean the government spends much of its budget on debt, leaving little for schools or infrastructure. Small businesses can't afford to expand. Fourth, persistent inflation. Prices for food and fuel keep rising, eroding the value of every dinar and forcing families to make tough choices. Fifth, soaring government debt. Years of deficits have created a mountain of debt, limiting the government's ability to respond to crises. These 5 horsemen feed off each other, creating a cycle that's hard to break. The result? A stagnant economy, rising social tensions, and a government with few options. To understand the depth of the crisis, we need to look at the numbers and the people behind them. Let's see what the data tells us. The numbers for 2025 are stark. GDP growth is just 1.2%, far below what's needed to reduce unemployment. Youth unemployment stands at a staggering 42%. Nearly half of young Tunisians looking for work can't find it. In regions like Kairouan, joblessness is even worse, highlighting deep regional inequalities. The central bank's interest rate remains high at 8%, trying to fight inflation but choking off credit and investment. Inflation is still 7.5%, so even modest salary increases don't keep up with rising prices. Government debt has soared past 90% of GDP, up from 55% a decade ago. Debt service now eats up over 15% of government spending, crowding out essential services. These numbers aren't just statistics, they're a warning siren. Without urgent action, the crisis will only deepen. But behind every number is a personal story. Every statistic hides a human struggle. Fatima, a vegetable seller in Tunis, used to run a stable business. Now her customers buy less and she throws away unsold food. The middle class is shrinking. Families cut out all non-essentials. No more eating out, no new clothes, vacations canceled. Anxiety about making ends meet is everywhere. For young people, the situation is even bleaker. Karim, a top computer engineering graduate, has applied for over 100 jobs and landed only 2 interviews. He now works part-time in a cafe. I did everything right, he says. For what, to serve coffee? This sense of betrayal is widespread, a lost generation with untapped potential. Economic hardship erodes trust in institutions and business confidence. Entrepreneurs hesitate to invest, and foreign investors stay away. The result is a vicious cycle. Low confidence leads to low investment, which means fewer jobs and even lower confidence. Breaking this cycle is Tunisia's greatest challenge. It will take more than policy tweaks. It will take restoring hope. But the external environment isn't making things any easier. Tunisia's economy is deeply tied to the world, especially Europe. Tourism and exports are lifelines, but both are fragile. Any slowdown in Europe means fewer tourists and export orders. Tunisia's exports are concentrated in a few sectors, making the country vulnerable to shocks abroad. As a net importer of food and energy, global price spikes hit hard, worsening inflation and the trade deficit. Internally, decades of high public sector wages and broad subsidies have created a structural deficit. Attempts to reform subsidies face fierce resistance from unions and the public, stalling progress. The government borrows to cover the gap, driving up interest rates and forcing the central bank to keep monetary policy tight. This stifles private investment, trapping the economy in a cycle of debt and stagnation. It's a classic debt trap with little room for error. The next steps are critical. Policymakers are caught between demands for austerity from international lenders and the urgent need for jobs at home. The central bank keeps interest rates high to fight inflation, but this chokes off growth. The government has tried modest subsidy cuts and a hiring freeze to unlock IMF loans, but reforms are partial and politically risky. Failure to secure IMF support could mean a financing crisis, missed salaries, debt default, and a currency collapse. Even without default, half measures mean Tunisia stays stuck in a low-growth, high-debt trap. The only way out is a tough social pact, targeted subsidies, restructuring state-owned firms, and business-friendly reforms. If successful, these changes could restore stability, lower inflation, and unleash private sector growth. But the path is narrow and the risks are high. The next moves will decide Tunisia's future. Tunisia stands at a crossroads. The old path of piecemeal reforms has led to stagnation and frustration. The 5 pain points, low growth, high unemployment, high borrowing costs, inflation and debt, are now deeply intertwined. The time for incremental change is over. Tunisia needs a bold, coordinated reform agenda. First, tackle the fiscal crisis, replace broad subsidies with targeted support and overhaul inefficient state enterprises. Second, unleash private sector growth by cutting red tape and improving the investment climate. This requires political actors to put national interest first and forge a social consensus for reform. The international community must provide patient, flexible support tied to real progress. Tunisia has the assets: a young, educated population, a strategic location, and resilience. The challenge is to unlock that potential before it's too late. The coming months will be decisive. The dream of 2011 is not dead, but only bold, unified action can revive it. The world is watching. For more data-driven insights and global market breakdowns, subscribe and turn on notifications. Stay informed, stay ahead. This is Economics FX, where clarity meets strategy. Until next time, trade smart.